break my game?
Maybe.
Yes. Was it worth it? I don't know. You can tell me. So this build started off all innocent, you know, in Copperdale, the vibes are so wholesome and pure. Just some small town thing, nothing could go wrong here. My game was still safe at this point, I hadn't added any lights yet. That's literally where it went wrong. But for now, it's okay. So this build actually originally started out as like a huge lot on a 50 by 50. It had a movie theater, it had a bar, it had a bowling alley, and it did have the ice cream in the arcade, but like...
That's a lot.
Like that's a lot. So I was like, I'm gonna go to a 20 by 15. I feel safe there. Oh Lord, I can only imagine the crashing that would have occurred on that lot. If this baby little lot was having trouble, could you imagine? That would suck, and it would be more broken than the game already is. So I settled on just the ice cream and the arcade aspects of the build, quality over quantity or something like that. And I knew it needed to be neon because this was for my neon collab. I first planned my neon lights collab back in November to celebrate 500 followers on the Instagram account I had recently gotten, and it featured 35 talented creators that were all making sims or building builds that were like bonkers. And me having put this build to the last minute, I was like, how do I be on par with this? So I looked at the Stranger Things poster that's been on my wall for years now, and I said, something can be done with this. And then I also thought of the bangerest Canadian tourist attraction ever, the Great Canadian Midway, which like, who needs Niagara Falls like 2 blocks away if we have an arcade, but like anyway. And I was like, I'm gonna smoosh those two together in one 20 by 15 lot that has so many lights it's like borderline obscene. I also feel like this is the build that started a moment for me where I was like, I am now obsessed with tool mod. Cause like, don't get me wrong, I've always loved tool mod, even if the move button scares me. But like, doing the little custom signs and like turning little details, I was like, this has awakened something in me. Cause I wanna say I'm at like the 5th stream post doing this build where I was like, yeah guys, today we're using a lot of tool mod. And then just did like a tiny little creation that took 8 years. But they all slap, so like, I'm gonna say that, you know? And at this point, the game was already kind of mad at me for this build, but I was like, no, we'll endure and survive, that's fine. I'm sure it's not a sign of worse things that are yet to come. It's only a little lag, I said. Narrator, it was not just a little lag. And because of that, I decided that I wasn't gonna do like the same design exactly the entire way around because that's like a lot of lights. That's a lot, but for the vibes, I needed it to look like that in the front at least. So we persevere. And the lights were not looking as bright here as I wanted them to, but I figured it was just because there was like white lights surrounding it that were washing out the color, I guess. And I think that's what it was because when I did all the colors to all of them, I think it fixed itself. Or maybe it was a situation of the colored lights like joining to create white as lights do. I remember that from elementary school science. I knew these mirrors from high school years needed to be in this build in some capacity, and I knew I couldn't fit them in the build because I had ideas for the space in there. And they're fairly large, so I just threw them on top of the building and made a cute little ice cream sign to go with them. At some point building this, I thought I lost the ice cream sign because you know when objects are spiritually connected to each other and you delete a wall and it deletes like 5 pieces of clutter, a closet, and a sink, and you're like, oh, okay, I didn't know those two were relevant to each other, but okay. And then it turned out that I was just looking at the wrong floor, which is embarrassing. No, like when I tell you I was mourning the loss of my ice cream sign, I'm not kidding. And this is the part of the build that did not record correctly, and I did have a moment about it, but it ended up being okay. The only reason is that it couldn't be in speed build form just because of like some audio things. But basically I just added more lights outside, a little menu sign, some landscaping around the edges to make it at least somewhat green, the outdoor seating with the umbrellas from For Rent, a little custom checkerboard floor, and these bathrooms with the funky mirrors. I also started on the kitchen right before I realized I was recording it wrong, so yeah. Enjoy my sad little half-hearted freezer placement. I was a little worried about combining neon and ice cream because I feel like ice cream vibes usually go with pastels, but then I was like, if Scoops Ahoy can do it, so can I. I looked on the gallery for like ice cream tubs from Cool Kitchen, but they just didn't work. So I decided that I was going to make my own ice cream tubs out of yarn? Well, yarn and marbles, which I did end up making 15 fake flavors out of those things, so that seems pretty good to me. And just as an aside, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? Because mine is cotton candy, and I always felt like I was shamed for that. I feel like in general, people aren't cotton candy ice cream girlies, but you know, it's probably more than the mint chocolate chip girlies, which I like that too. I don't know about you guys saying it tastes like toothpaste. It's weird, because I actually feel like in my mind, bubblegum tastes like toothpaste, and it's because I had Barbie bubblegum toothpaste as a child, and it was so saturated. It was like bright pink, like it still stained the floors in the bathroom. And no, I don't know how toothpaste got on the floor. I was a child. And I still get mad when toothpaste falls off the toothbrush. But that's my own fault for being a put water on the toothbrush after the toothpaste is already on it girly. I don't know if that's controversial either. Let me know. Oh yeah, another one of my hot ice cream takes is that I don't really like chocolate ice cream just by itself, because if it has things mixed in, then it's amazing. The Netflix and the Jimmy Fallon flavors of Ben & Jerry's are some of my favorite ice creams, and they both have lots of chocolate in them, so I guess all hope isn't lost. I actually think that making the custom flavors like this turned out better than just using the Sims ice cream tubs would have anyways, because food textures in this game don't look that good. And I get it, it's a stylized thing, it's a low poly type game, but the food is rough, you gotta admit. I had a food texture overhaul mod that completely broke with the last update that we got before Crystal Creations, which did not feel relevant to the update content at all. But I'm a CC creator and not a modder, so I couldn't tell you what the actual content was in the land of coding. All I know is that it broke more stuff. Pretends to be shocked. I made this little toppings counter, kind of inspired by the Marble Slab Creamery, because boy do I love that place. The cheesecake flavored ice cream is the perfect base, don't at me. And for my clutter here, pretend the soap bottles aren't soap, okay? It's sauce of some kind. I struggled way too long deciding on a neon sign for that wall, and then stocked the rest of the fridges with ice cream-like ingredients, or at least stuff that you would buy alongside ice cream. They probably sell at least a drink or two. Arcades get so sweaty. Like when you're trying to master those rigged games, boy, does that get to you. I was gonna do diner seating inside before I realized that there's absolutely zero space. I never end up using those fun diner booths in any builds because they're so big, and Sims can only scooch in on them from one side anyway, so what's the point? It's not like I'm having them in the center in a line. Why can't they scooch? They need to know how to scooch. They can do that on beds, can't they? I've never seen them do it, but can't they do it? Isn't that a feature? It was at this point that my game broke. I took a break from building, and then I tried to open it, and it did not open. And then when it finally did open, it crashed. And then it crashed again and again and again. And that's not even the worst it got. I feel like that's supposed to be a feature, but it never works for anybody ever. I spent the next 2 hours of my life making this claw machine, and before you ask me why it took so long, I don't know. I spent a lot of time scrolling through the catalog and looking at reference photos, okay? Because claw machines were an important part of my youth. I need to make sure I get it right. And as usual, making something that isn't in the game makes me wish that we had it in the game. I just want a little baby arcade stuff pack. I feel like that's not too much to ask. A claw machine, a skee ball perhaps. My Sims would never be at home ever because they would always be at the arcade. Growing up, I only went to an arcade about probably once a year or less, and I loved them so much. I was always so jealous of the kids in the movies that had an arcade in their local small town, and it was so fun and cute. And even though it cost 2,000 tickets for a tiny stuffed bear that was probably manufactured for like $2, even though you just spent $50 on tokens for that, they were worth it for the experience, and I still have all of them. This again was one of those examples where I got lost in the sauce in Tool Mod. Again, I love Tool Mod, but it absorbs me. I can't just add one thing with it. It would have been fine with just a button, but I was like, no, joystick. And then I guess the claw machine wasn't enough because then I made a basketball arcade game. There was a restaurant I went to as a kid that had this exact arcade game in it, and I sucked so bad at it. It's not even that I'm bad at basketball per se, it's that the timer, it gets to me. And don't tell me that like Michael Jordan also had a timer stressing him out, because actually, yeah, no, that's probably true. I don't know, those basketballs and those arcade machines were not regulation. They were little and overinflated like the carnival ones to make you lose. I also added a bunch of those like sit-down arcade games. I went to an exhibition once about like the history of gaming, and there were so many of these. There was like huge lines of them. It looked like a lane at like Walmart or something. Also, I believe the word is aisle and not lane, but okay, me from 5 seconds ago, that's fine. Express yourself, I guess. I gave them each a little sign and patted them on the head for their individuality, but then I decided on all pink chairs because I like pink chairs, so who needs another reason? These arcade machines were also given little buttons and joysticks in different positions for their different controls and such. I had to keep deleting the wall to add the detail that I wanted with like the wall decor, and I swear I've never been more angry at wall snapping in my entire life of playing this game. I really wish we had a toggleable button for snapping. Replacing objects is literally the dream, and I want it. I made a Dance Dance Revolution machine. Hypothetically, your Sims could go on some pretty intense dance battles. Just have them stand near it and like picture it in your mind. Not that a Sim is able to come to this build anyway, because the final story of how this broke my game is that I can't open the lot in live mode, and when I do, I can't go back to manage worlds because then the game crashes. So she may be pretty, but it's all a front. I spent hours trying trying to get it to work by getting rid of specific lights and getting rid of like enormous amounts of clutter to see if I could actually make it function. Ha ha, how naive I am, because now that lot doesn't even work for anything. If you want a build that actually works, consider watching this one. What's better than just this eye candy is functional eye candy. If you want me to make like a functional arcade, let me know. I'll see you in the next one.